Let's get started, please.
Motion to reconvene?
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, number two, as we've already had our executive session, I will say tonight that items number 24, the farm ordinance and the affordable housing, if anybody's here for that, we will continue that to the March 4th meeting. So I just want to make sure we made you aware of that at the beginning so no one's sitting around, okay? Waiting for those. Number two, appointment of town official. Memorandum of Town Administrator in reference to appointment of Police Chief William D. Cure.
Motion to receive said memorandum and confirm appointment of William D. Cure as police chief.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Brown.
Mr. Roderick's Town Council, it's my privilege this evening to bring my recommendation for the town's next police chief, which is William Cure. What I'd like to do first is just talk a little bit about the process that we followed to get to this point, which was extremely thorough and I think speaks to Chief Cure's desire to work here, as well as the commitment he's already demonstrated to the department. As we're all aware, Chief Passari resigned. His last day at work was November 16th. His retirement date was December 31st, and he had a long, distinguished career here in the town of Middletown. So this was, I saw as a huge task for myself to find a new chief. The council was very supportive of me during that process. They allowed me to hire Municipal Resources Incorporated out of New Hampshire to create literally a nationwide, extremely professional and thorough process to find the right person. We started that process. We originally received 53 candidates. The candidates that we received submitted resumes from Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, Florida, Oregon, New Hampshire, Illinois, Arkansas, Minnesota, Texas, and North Carolina. So we did have a great number of qualified people that came in. And from those 53 applications, we whittled it down to 19 people that submitted responses to essay questions that were written specifically about the police profession as well as issues related to the town of Middletown. From those 19, and you'll see sort of the issue we had, we were only able to reduce from 19 to 14 applications for a first round of telephone interviews. Those interviews were done by different members of Municipal Resources, Inc., each of those having served in the role as a chief in another community. Once those were evaluated, we got it down to 5 candidates. And what we did is we set up an assessment center. It was a one-day gathering of those 5 candidates along with a civilian panel that we put together. And I'd just like to recognize those people for the effort they put in. It was Audrey Pfeiffer, Colonel Brendan Doherty from the Rhode Island State Police, Rocky Kempinar, Father John O'Brien from St. Lucy's, Dick Adams, Kim Bullock, who's at St. George's as their diversity officer, and our own Chuck Pava, who not only has a business but is the general manager of the Gulls. So a very diverse group of people that really represent the town of Middletown in the end. They spent the day, along with other professional evaluators, meeting each of the 5 candidates. I received, at the end of the day, a recommendation from that panel, as well as from the professional evaluators, and 3 names were forwarded to myself, and those were also shared with the town council. For the final interviews, the candidates spent the day, portion of the day here at Town Hall. Each of the candidates spent approximately 90 minutes with me, and then they spent an hour each with the town council, sharing stories about their profession, sharing their qualifications, and answering questions, really good questions that the council had put together. From that entire experience, Bill Cure was head and shoulders above the other candidates, and therefore I brought you his recommendation to you this evening. So what I'm asking for is your ratification of that appointment.
Okay. Thank you, Sean. I'd like to ask Bill to come up with his daughter, Emily. I'd like to welcome, warm Middletown welcome to our new police chief, Bill Cure, and his daughter, Emily. Okay, so I'd like to give you a little bit of background on Bill. Bill recently retired after a 29 and a half year career with the Connecticut State Police, where he served in numerous leadership roles in every rank from trooper through lieutenant colonel. As lieutenant colonel, he commanded the Office of Administrative Services. As a major, he commanded the largest district in the state, which included 3 state police barracks to include the Central District Major Crime Unit. Prior to that, he served as the deputy director of the State of Connecticut's Intelligence Center and held several command positions to include Emergency Services, Eastern District Major Crime, and Troop Commander of Troop E in Montville and Troop D in Danielson. During his tenure with the Connecticut State Police, he has been recognized for his exemplary service, in which he has received 2 Meritorious Service Awards, Outstanding Service Awards, Life-Saving Award, and unit citations. Bill earned a bachelor's degree from UMass Dartmouth. He is a graduate of the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia, and the National Fusion Center's Director's Leadership Program at the Naval Post Graduate School in Monterey, California. Prior to joining the Connecticut State Police, he served with the Yarmouth, Mass. Police Department. Some of the people that are here to support Bill, I'd like to recognize them. His daughter Emily, as I stated earlier, who attends Roger Williams University, majoring in criminal justice. Lieutenant Chris Mason, Deputy Superintendent of the Massachusetts State Police. Lieutenant Bill Arcadi, Rhode Island State Police Commandant of the Rhode Island State Police Training Academy. Don Kennedy, retired Captain, Rhode Island State Police and Executive Director of the NESPIN, New England State Police Information Network. I apologize, Richard, I'm gonna butcher your last name. All right, I'll just pass, thank you. Piachinsky, okay, retired CSP, now the Assistant Director of Security at Salve Regina. Mike Jagoda, retired CSP, now Major Executive Officer of URI Police Department. And Chris Kean, longtime friend of Bill, so along with other friends and family. So welcome you. Wendy, I believe you're going to administer the oath. I swear Bill in.
I'll just move this over a little bit. That way. Thank you.
Do you, William D. Kewer, solemnly swear that you will support, preserve, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the state of Rhode Island, and that you will execute your duties as Chief of Police to the best of your ability, faithfully and impartially, enforcing all laws and ordinances, zealously guarding the constitutional rights of all persons in accordance with the rules and regulations of the Middletown Police Department, so help you God.
All right, congratulations.
Obrigado.
Thanks, Chief. Do I get to use this timer here? I don't know how it works yet. But first of all, I feel at home. Thank you very much.
Welcome to your 5 minutes, sir. No, I'm just kidding.
The green light is on.
So it is. I see it. I got 5 minutes. It'll be short. No one's ever called me short-winded. I can tell you that with all my family and friends. But first and foremost, honored and humbled. It's an honor for me to be here, and I want to recognize the other candidates. There was an immense amount of great candidates in this process, and I'm humbled and honored to be here before you today. In addition, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the community panel who played such an integral role in the selection of the police chief. They show that they care by showing up and being involved in the process, which is paramount in any selection of any public official. I'd like to thank Town Administrator Sean Brown. I'd like to thank the honorable members of the council for your dedicated service, as well as your commitment to me and your support of me as your police chief. With that being said, as we move forward, and I'd like to also add only the 10th police chief in the history of the Middletown Police Department, and that is truly an honor for me. Lastly, I'd just like to say that as we move forward in the future here, I am truly committed to working with the community and the brave men and women of the Middletown Police Department to move this department forward and to move this community forward. But it is truly a team effort. We need to synergize our efforts to continue to do better and chase perfection to make sure that this community stays amongst the safest in Rhode Island. I'm honored and privileged to be leading such a great organization. I look forward to meeting each and every one of them. They will meet me very quickly in the next few weeks. And I want to thank you, and I look forward to working with you all, including the community, to make this town safer. So thank you again for your support. I already feel at home, and I look forward to rolling my sleeves up and getting to work. So thank you very much.
Sean, Council Lombardi.
Sean, I would like to recommend that the members of the community panel, if you haven't already done so, would you send them a letter thanking them for the town council, the time that they gave to this selection? Because as the chief just said, they were a very important, integral part of the selection process.
Will do.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. All right. This is the good stuff, you know, when you see stuff like that and people get promoted and welcomed into the community, so. Okay, so let's move on. Again, Bill, welcome, and welcome to Middletown, you and Emily, and we're looking forward to working with you as well.
Thank you, sir.
You got it, thank you. Okay, so next up is the public forum. Okay, so number 3, pursuant to Rule 25 of the Rules of the Council, citizens may address the town on one subject only, said subject of substantive town business, neither discussed during the regular meeting, nor related to personnel or job performance. Citizens may speak for no longer than 5 minutes and must submit a public participation form to the council clerk prior to the start of the meeting. All items discussed during this session will not be voted upon.
There was one form.
Yes, we do have a form. Okay. Kathy Silvera. No, that's item number 25. Just state your name and address, please.
Kathy Silvera, 52 Center Avenue in Middletown.
Thank you, Kathy.
I just wanted to give, I live over on Center Avenue. Center and Alston are my neighborhood. I just want to give you a synopsis of the first 14 days of the month. On February 2nd, we had a smell of a gas smell that one of our neighbors notified us of. We were not home. I can't have these glasses on and read. And we arrived home a little later. They called the National Grid, so National Grid was in the neighborhood, and this was about 7 or 8 p.m. And then continuing until about 9 or 10, all of a sudden there were guys walking up and down the street that had headlamps on, and they came in my yard. I said, you know, what's going on? He said, we have to check every single house to see where the gas leak is. So then we never heard anything further.
Excuse me, Kathy. Can you
Does that
just
count
close
towards
that
my
door, please?
time?
No. Thank you. Sorry.
That's
Sorry.
okay. What was it? Okay, so he was walking up and down the street. He said he had to check every single house to see if there was a gas leak in the house. So I told him a few of the houses that were vacant, and I had keys to a couple houses if he needed me to get into them. So we never heard anything further. About midnight, the trucks moved in over on Alston on a vacant lot that they had just cleared a few days before that. And that evidently that's where the gas leak is, which I would never really know because no one was ever notified. From midnight until about 3 in the morning, it was like a laser light show at our house. The lights were going, the pounding, the drilling, everything going on. So Monday morning, I contacted Jack Kane because I figured the building inspector would know something, and I called Tom O'Laughlin. Tom called me right back, and he said that he knew nothing about what was going on and that he would go and check it out. So that was that. And then the next day, they started putting the sewer pipes in on Alston Avenue. They never notified any of the neighbors, so nobody knew to move their cars. They didn't know they couldn't get in and out of the street. So there's my second day. Then on February 14th, I returned home from work about 6 p.m. and those good old sewer main trucks, the cleaning guys, were in front of my house. And I was 6 o'clock at night. So I went out and I asked, they weren't there. So then I walked next door to my neighbor, who is Ed Topa, 48 Center Avenue, which I believe he sent everyone an email, a detailed email today. And I said, so what kind of a show are we having here this time? And the guy from East Coast Construction said, we have to dig your neighbor's yard up. And I said, well, I hope you had the courtesy to ask him. And they said, yes, we did. I said, well, does anybody from the town know about this? And they said, as far as we know, no. So they started digging at about 9 o'clock, and they dug until 7:30 the next morning. They dug, they jackhammered, they paved the road, everything. No communication from the town. Now, I know it had, let's see, where am I? I sent an email to the town council and everybody that was involved. I heard back from Mr. Sylvia, and I spoke to Councilor Flynn. I just want to say that in regards to this sewer maintenance work, in about October, I had contacted Sean about it, that going forward, I think that they need to be a little bit more open with the residents about what's going on. I think that the whole area of Center, Alston, Renfrew, that whole area, they've been in our neighborhood for 10 months. The entire summer, it took almost 15 minutes to get from Center Avenue to Aquidneck, because every road was blocked off with no signs. You'd get up to a road, and then you'd have to turn around and go back out to somewhere else that's blocked off. And it's the complete lack of communication with the residents is just poor right now. Those are 3 instances that happened just in my immediate neighborhood, and we've had no, Mr. Topa has not even been contacted by the town. His yard is a wreck. You know, the street in front of it is a wreck. But this whole sewer maintenance thing, is just, it's kind of like, it's kind of unnerving that they are constantly in your yard or in front of your house. One day they were in front of my house for 13 hours with the engines revving and the smoke billowing out, but we had no notification, nothing that said, don't use your water, don't do this. The guys were nice. A couple times they knocked on my door at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they are very, very polite. They said, you're probably going to want to move your car because we're going to be here all day. Now, why wasn't I notified of that the day before? Why isn't anybody notified of anything? But if they ever end up moving out of our neighborhood and into the next neighborhood, I think that the residents need to be notified by letter, not by the Daily News, but by letter that says, this is going to be going on for 6 months. Just be prepared that, you know, and that's essentially what my gripe is right now. But I am just very disheartened by the lack of communication with the town and the residents, because there's really no reason for it. But those 3 instances I have had, and none of us have, I mean, we never even got notification whether that gas issue was taken care of. You know, my understanding was that if someone had lit a cigarette near there, it could have blown up the neighborhood. That's what we were told, so by, you know, whoever was there.
Yeah.
The people that owned the property were away and didn't even know about it until one of the neighbors told them.
Okay.
So I sent an email to everybody. Ed Topa sent an email to everybody, and I just hope that we get some kind of a response and that we can just turn into more of a proactive community, you know.
Well, I gotta be honest with you, Kathy. I think that, I'm sorry you had to go through that, first of all. But that surprises me a little bit, because I know in the past when we've contracted out, they've actually gone around and put door hangers on. Like I came home today and there was one on my door saying,
Because you live,
I live on Prospect, but.
okay, but you're the
it's
lesson
after-
learned.
Right,
You're the
but-
lesson learned.
No.
They're moving on to you.
No, because it was after the fact, actually. That's right.
No, what I'm saying is that they already have been messing around with us for the 10 months, and now they're moving on to you. You weren't there all summer.
No, but what my point is, to your notification issue, is that I got a door hanger today, but they've been in the neighborhood for a week. So
We've got
we'll have to talk
one-
about that because,
I believe I got one handwritten note from the guys one day that said, "We'll probably be at the house tomorrow morning," so I
Yeah.
knew to move the car. But other than that, that's not,
I agree, I
so,
agree.
but thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming forward with that. Yes, Mrs. Sanos.
Ms. Silveria, may I ask what company it was? Do you recall what company that was doing all the work?
The East Coast Construction is who dug up my neighbor's yard, but I just
I
know
think
it's
it's New
the,
England Water Main Cleaning Company.
no, it's
National Water Main?
National Water Main,
National.
out of Newark and Canton.
Yeah,
Yes.
Sean, the other thing is too is, I mean, it was, just so you know, we probably need to have a discussion with them, not only to Kathy's point, it's probably happened in other neighborhoods, because I know I leave for work about 10 of 6 every morning, and last week or 2 weeks ago when I came out, backing out of my driveway, they had the lights going, the truck was there, revved up, whatever.
They're
they
there
were
at 6:30 is what
5:30.
time they start,
It was
yeah.
5:30, they were there. I mean, so we probably need to have a discussion.
Yep, I will do that.
Mr. Lombardo.
So, to your point, you know I drive through that neighborhood every day. I have to work that way. And it's a different detour every day.
One day this summer, I drove down, out of Center, down Purgatory to go cut through Alston, and it was blocked off. And I said to the police officer, I said, "It's gonna take me 15 minutes to get out of here." And he said, "Where do you wanna go?" I said, "To Aquidneck Avenue." And he just laughed,
It's the old, you can't get there from here,
Nope.
because I run into it. I
Yeah.
run into it every day.
But the poor signage, which towards the end, when I had spoken to Sean, they did put a couple signs up, but like on Newport Avenue, which, if it's not really that affected, it needs to be road closed. Even the other night with all the construction on Center. Now granted, it was 9 o'clock at night, but people don't have a brain. They see all these trucks and they still were pulling up Center and trying to make their way around all these trucks. There was no police officer there, there was nothing. And it's just like when the water main guys are there, the trash trucks are crisscrossing. There's the UPS and FedEx guys are going up and down the street. The only one that doesn't show up is the mailman, which don't even go there.
They come on Sundays now.
That's
Seen
the
them, yeah.
Amazon guy.
Yeah, that's right, that's
But,
right.
but thank you very much.
Thank you, Captain, appreciate it. Okay, presentations, number 4, communication of Council Lombardi and Council Santos in reference to the Red Cross Emergency Shelter recognition.
Motion to receive said communication and begin said presentations.
Second.
Okay, motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Council Lombardi and Council Santos.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason for this presentation tonight is during the recent National Grid gas outage, there were so many people in our community that played an important role to make sure that our residents were safe and that they received the necessary help and assistance, whether it be from National Grid or from the town or from the state. And one of the more important ones was the emergency shelter up at Corday School. And I'd like to have Charlie Fitzpatrick from Portsmouth and Carmela Gear, if you would come up, please. So the shelter, literally, I would say, provided services during that period for 8 days, 18-hour days for the most part for some of these people. And they provided shelter in some cases, a place to stay warm, a place to get a meal, a place to sit with National Grid and coordinate to get vouchers so they had a place to stay. and prepare the necessary paperwork for reimbursements and so many things. But these things don't happen without volunteers. They don't happen just by, they don't come out of the woodwork. You need to have strong, dedicated people to do this. And Charlie is the Red Cross representative and the shelter coordinator from Portsmouth. I have that right?
I coordinated for the entire state.
For the-
Reside in Portsmouth.
And you reside in Portsmouth, so you coordinate, okay, for the entire state. I didn't know that. Thank you. And Carmela Gear is the Red Cross shelter coordinator for the town of Middletown.
I'm the shelter manager and actually we coordinate all three towns, Middletown, Newport, and Portsmouth.
Right, so they're the regional shelter for us. And before I go any further, I'm going to ask a couple other people to come up here. Jamie Lynch, Bob Poddington, Peter Pro, Derek Jordan. Of course, we have Carmela Gear. We have Trudy Duval. Trudy? Heidi Taylor. And Leslie, I hope I get your name right, Unanks. Did I get it right? Huh? Yeah. So these are just some of the volunteers. And Carmela, how many volunteers do you have total? You think?
Say about 74 volunteers.
About 74 volunteers. And these are just some of our locals, and some of them are not from the island, but they gladly came down and helped our residents. So what I'd like to do is, we both read the same. So the citation reads, "Be it here known to all that the town of Middletown hereby recognize Charles Fitzpatrick and Carmela Gear for selfless dedication, time, and effort during the National Grid gas outage, which affected thousands of Middletown and Newport residents. The town councilors extend their deepest gratitude and appreciation given this 19th day of February 2019. And Mrs. Santos? And we have a token of appreciation for our volunteers also. We have to take these back because Bob hasn't signed them. We'll make sure you get them. So once again, on behalf of the town, and behalf of the residents of Aquidneck Island, for that matter, not just the town of Middletown, I think I'd like to say for everybody in the room, say thank you very much for all that you do. Again, no matter what we do in this town, we have so many volunteers that are just so important to us, and because nothing would get done without our volunteers. So once again, thank you all very much.
Okay. Rick, you might as well just stay right down there. Oh, there's not? Want to do from up here? Okay.
I don't think there's anybody there. Oh, there is. Nice. Okay, perfect.
Stay right there.
Come on up.
Okay, I'll read this in and I'll meet you down there in a minute. Number 5, communication of Council President Sylvia. Bob's not here tonight, and Council and Body. I'll be taking Bob's place in reference to gas outage of the Potter League recognition.
Motion to receive said communication and begin presentation. Hi, Brad, how are you?
Second. Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, awesome. Okay, we're here tonight to recognize the Potter League, and this is in reference to the gas outage as well. You know, National Grid provided vouchers for folks that were affected for places to stay, hotels, stuff like that. But some of the places weren't pet friendly. So the Potter League stepped up and they took in 101 pets during the 2-week outing. So I think it's fantastic. And, you know, we take for granted as a community, at least I know it, I do a lot of times until the contract comes before us, and it's a great deal for the town of Middletown, what the Potter League really does. So just another example of a community coming together, people helping people, and that's what makes a community, binds a community together, is when people help people and come together, especially in a situation like this. So we're here to recognize the Potter League, and I'll turn it over to Rick.
So I just want to say that, you know, so many of us here are animal lovers, and I have 2 shepherds, and one of them's a rescue. And my wife and my daughter are there all the time, and I shudder every time that they go to the Potter shelter because I'm afraid they're going to come home with another one. But I want to say that I was talking to President Sylvia today, and he's not here tonight, but he and his wife Barbara are huge supporters of the Potter League. They have 4 rescues, I believe, plus a cat. And, I mean, they have dogs that are blind and everything. I mean, it's amazing. So this is something that's near and dear to our hearts for many of us in this room. So I want to just thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you did for our residents. And I know of at least one case where someone brought their dog to the Potter shelter and went home to their house without heat and stayed at their house, but wanted to make sure that their dog was taken care of. I mean, that's the kind of people that are out there taking care of these animals. So, on behalf of the Town Council, be it hereby known to all that the Middletown Town Council hereby offers its sincerest appreciation to the Robert Potter League for Animals for the League's outstanding contributions in making their services available to our citizens' pets during the national grid outage, which affected thousands of Middletown and Newport residents. The Town Councilors extend their deepest gratitude and appreciation given this 19th day of February 2019. Congratulations and thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you. I think you said it best that you know, we're only here because we have a very supportive community. We had a tremendous turnout of volunteers. Our staff stayed late. We stayed open for 3 days straight. We didn't close, and staff and volunteers just stepped up to make that happen. It's like you said, it's really just about the people in the community who care, and we were honored that people entrusted us with the care of their pets, and that we were able to be there when we were called upon. But like you said, it's all about the people who show up, and a lot of people showed up to help out. So thank you.
Great job, thank you.
We can put your wife and daughter on the list.
I think they're on the list.
Rick, I need that back to get
Oh,
Bob's
yeah.
signature.
We're going to get one more signature.
We'll make sure you get that, though. Okay. Oops. Okay.
Motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of number 7, number 13, and number 14.
Okay, a motion is second to approve the consent calendar minus items number 7, 13, and 14. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's read in number 7. Communication of Paul A. Croce, Chairman, Planning Board, in reference to proposed amendments to subdivision regulations, Article 4, in Appendix A, regarding fees, forms, and checklists, requires advertising for a public hearing.
I didn't pull it off.
No, you have to read the
Oh,
motion.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Motion to receive the motion?
Second.
Okay, a motion is second to receive said communication and advertise for public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, what we have to do with this is we need to send it back to the planning board. Sean, I don't know if you want to speak about that a little bit?
Just very quickly, I'm requesting the council send it back to the planning board. I did review this in detail today, and I apologize for doing it late. I I want to review the method in which the fees were calculated to be certain they're consistent with what we've done in the building department. So respectfully, I just ask the council to send it back so we can review and amend as necessary.
Okay. Wendy, do we need a motion to send it back, or we just?
Yeah, we do need a motion to send
Okay.
it back.
Motion to send the communication back to the planning board and requires advertising for public hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to number 13. Number 13, petition of National Grid and Verizon for Green Inn Avenue, proposed new joint-owned pole location. This has been approved by the Roads and Utility Advisory Committee.
Motion to receive
Second.
Motion approved.
and motion to approve said petition.
Okay, motion is second. Discussion.
This is just sort of a clarification and question. So they're going to take, first of all, on number 13, and this is for you, Peter, they're, do you have the attachments? Because they have two maps, one map and one write-up. And they've got, and my question is this a legal document? Because in the top map, they indicate that the open circle is a proposed pole, and in the bottom write-up, they call it an existing pole. And is that a problem?
I think it indicates that there's an existing pole that's going to be removed and replaced with a new pole. That's how I read that.
Well, do you see in the top map,
Mm-hmm.
the open circle says proposed pole location? And in the bottom, the symbol key says the open circle is existing. Is that an issue? If this is a legal document,
Well,
is that an issue?
I think it would be an issue, and I don't know if the town administrator or someone from the roads committee understands exactly what you guys are approving. I mean, I guess that's the question here.
Well,
It would, because it says proposed pole location is the closed circle, proposed location is the open circle, and then that is, I agree, that's inconsistent with what's written down below. So we may want to get some clarification on that before you approve it, so you know exactly what it is you're approving.
But, Mr. President,
yes, Mr. Sanos.
Town Administrator, this was approved by the Roads and Utilities Committee, right? Didn't they?
It was, but I don't know, but it's unclear based on this map what they approved.
They went out to the site.
I know, but what's written here and what's being presented is not clear. You could interpret this two different ways.
Okay, so let's
So-
just,
so I think we should
I
get some
agree, let's just get some clarification.
Yeah, and then bring it back.
Well, we can send it back, and if we can get some clarification for the March 4th meeting, that'd be great.
Yeah.
A motion to send this back to the Roads and Utilities Advisory Committee
For clarification.
for clarification.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Great, let's move on to number 14.
And that's the same thing.
Okay, well, let's read it in. Petition of National Grid and Verizon for Green Avenue, proposed new solely owned pole location approved by the Roads and Utilities Committee.
Motion to approve said petition.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
Is this
It's
the
all
same
part of the
thing?
same
Same-
thing,
you
so
want
it
the
has to
same-
go back to make sure
There's
that
two
they're
different
consistent.
drawings though, right? There's two different maps.
Well, I think it's all part of the same project. They're taking, if I understood it correctly, they're
Are you
taking down a
asking-
pole, putting up a pole, and then two poles, what today is going to be three poles, but
And-
because the first one's inconsistent in part of it, I think they're
You want
together.
clarification on this as well?
Yes.
Okay,
Motion to send this back to the Roads and Utilities Advisory Committee for clarification.
Second.
okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, excellent. Licenses and permits. Number 19, application for special event permit from the Norman Bird Sanctuary, Birds and Breakfast at 583 Third Beach Road on Sunday, May 5th, 2019, from 8:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Includes a request to waive permit fees.
Motion to grant said special event permit and waive permit fees.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion to second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Number 20, application for a special event permit for the Norman Bird Sanctuary, 13th Annual 5K in honor of David Lees Jr. Begins and ends at 583 Third Beach Road on Saturday, June 15th, 2019, beginning at 8:30 a.m. Includes a request to waive permit fees.
Motion to grant said special event permit and waive permit fees.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Number 21, application for special event permit from the Norman Bird Sanctuary, Beach Bash, third beach property next to Peabody's Beach, on Thursday, August 8th, 2019. The rain date will be Thursday, August 15th, 2019, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Includes a request to waive permit fees.
Motion to grant said special event permit and waive permit fees.
Second.
Any discussion? Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Number 22, application for special event permit from the Norman Bird Sanctuary, 44th Annual Harvest Fair at 583 Third Beach Road on Saturday, October 5th, 2019, and Sunday, October 6th, 2019, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Includes a request to waive permit fees.
Motion to grant said special event permit and waive permit fees.
Second.
Any discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Let's move on to public hearings. Number 23, continued from the February 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the council. Public hearing has been advertised. Public hearing remains open. An ordinance of the Town of Middletown, second reading. An ordinance and amendment to the Town Code of the Town of Middletown, Title 15, Land Usage, Chapter 152 Zoning Codes, Section 400, Definitions, and Section 704, Height and Yard Modifications. See the attached ordinance.
Public hearing remains open.
Okay, this is the second reading, or the second public hearing on this proposed ordinance change. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this? Any councils like to speak on this? Peter, if you could just give a quick, brief overview.
Yeah,
of-
so this was suggested by the planning board with regard to the height of buildings. There's two aspects of this. The legislature and the General Assembly changed once again the definition of building height. That will go into effect as of March 1st of this year. And basically, what it says is that building height, rather than being measured from the average grade where the building is located, in a flood zone, it will be measured from the base flood elevation. So if the base flood elevation is 8 feet above the actual grade, you would start the building height at that point. So in order to make sure that we don't have buildings getting too tall in some of these coastal areas, the planning board came up with the suggestion of essentially the ordinance lowering building heights, the allowable building heights within the flood zone properties by 8 feet. And so that was the idea, is that we didn't want to have buildings that might be 15, 20 or feet taller than what would otherwise be permitted in these zones. There was, in addition to what was presented at the first reading, I provided the council with an alternative to this, which would, after discussions with Mr. Wolanski, which would just have that portion of the change apply only to primary buildings as opposed to accessory buildings. Accessory buildings being things like sheds, garages, et cetera. And the reason for that is accessory building allowable heights are usually 15 feet or so lower than primary structures, and if we lower that another 8 feet, you really come up with a building that's not really usable for anything. So, so the two suggested amendments to what was presented at the first meeting would have this apply only to the reduction of height only to primary buildings and not accessory buildings, and then in terms of the timing, have both of these amendments, the state law change as well as the local ordinance change, be effective both on March 1st.
Okay.
So, Peter, I guess the only question I have is, I think the town's done a good job reacting to what the state proposed in order to counter the potential height difference.
Yep.
And I support that. But the accessory uses, what if somebody, because you know somebody's going to do it, or try to do it, where they, maybe it's a garage, and maybe they have plans down the road to turn it into an apartment at some point, where they masquerade it as a garage at first. How does that fall into this? in a flood zone. And then the neighbor has to live with it.
Well,
You know what I mean? If it's only applies to
well, first of
principal
all,
buildings and
the town ordinance already allows only one primary dwelling structure per lot. So if I have my house and I've got a dwelling there, I can't have a detached garage and put a second dwelling in without getting approval from the zoning board.
Right, so they
So-
come in and get approval from the zoning board, and it's not part of, because it only says principal uses in that flood zone.
Yeah, I think that
I'm just curious that somebody, someone's gonna try it where, okay, there's a loophole here where, this isn't the principal use, so it doesn't apply. It's an accessory use, so I'm gonna build this monster garage, and I can get approval for it.
Well, I think
Maybe.
that may be a bit of a stretch. I think the concern with this amendment was, for example, in many of these zones, an accessory building is limited to 20 feet in height. If we took 8 feet off of that, now we're down to 12 feet in height,
Okay.
which you're gonna end up with, as opposed, someone wants to put a shed, you're ending up with flat roofed buildings
Okay.
without the ability to put a peak on.
Yeah,
So,
that just
yeah.
crossed my mind when I read it, so. Okay.
Okay,
We do have someone like to speak. Mr. Viveras, please come up and state your name and address for the record.
Anton Viveros, 110 Indian Hill Road. I just want a little clarification. If the zoning says 40 feet and you move it into a floodplain, you're going to take, according to this, you're going to take 10 feet off, so the building can only be 32 feet.
8 feet.
8 feet. To meet what the state said, in a flood zone, you can stop at that grade of 8 feet. And so to compensate for that, this ordinance is saying, we're gonna reduce that by 8 feet, so you're not 48 feet.
If you're in an area where the floodplain is 10 feet, what happens?
Then if the base flood elevation, then you'd measure your height from that
10
10 feet. But your allowable height would be, of the building itself, would be reduced by 8 feet. Problem is, we can't change the definition of building height because that is set by state law. So we can't pass an ordinance that essentially negates what the state legislature has done in terms of how you measure building height. What we can do is we can control the allowable maximum height of buildings in different zones within the town. So what this does is it says if you're in a floodplain area, the maximum building height is going to be reduced by that 8 feet, with the idea that that will give the town some control over the overall height of the structures.
So if I want to build a 3-story building, 40 feet, normally, that would be from grade level. If it's in a floodplain zone, and the floodplain is 10 feet or 10 feet, I have to raise my building 10 feet.
Yes,
or
but
8
your
feet.
allowable height, if the allowable height of that building outside of the floodplain, if the maximum height allowed on a town ordinance was 40 feet, this would reduce it within the floodplain to 32 feet.
Okay, then, okay, because it actually will, if it's 8 feet, it will actually be 40 feet high. Because I got a lot for.
Yeah, but it won't be 50 feet high.
No, from grade level.
Or 48,
From grade
or
level,
48.
from grade level, it'd be 40 feet high.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Would anybody else like to speak? Yes. Teresa, please come up and state your name and address for the record. And you don't have to run.
I always run. Teresa Spangler, 1111 Wapping Road. Just a quick question. With these ordinances and the possibility that you folks approve them and everything, is there going to be the opportunity for applicants to come forward and ask for waivers? Or is the town going to stand their ground on?
Applicants always, under state law, have the right to go to the zoning board and request a dimensional variance if they can prove the requisite hardship. So that's not something that we can eliminate. That's provided under state law.
State law.
It is?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you have that right.
But hardship, Peter, I mean,
Isn't hardship specifically defined?
Hardship is defined as some
Some discretion in there.
and Mr. Silva can always correct me because he knows more about this than I do. But it's some unique characteristic of the property or the subject structure where literal enforcement of the regulations would amount to something, a hardship more than a mere inconvenience. The simplest example I can give you is you have a lot in the R10 zone. It's supposed to, at 10,000 square feet, the lot only has 4,000 square feet. And when you apply the setbacks that would be applicable to a full 10,000 square foot lot, you end up with a building envelope that basically allows you to build a house that's not any reasonable size. So you have a right to say, because of the unique characteristics of this lot, applying standards that are meant for a much larger lot are creating a hardship for me. I can't build a reasonably sized house compatible with the neighborhood. You go and you request a variance.
Okay, and I certainly understand that, and I respect that. I think that something that has happened in this town numerous times, and it's a concern I have for the rapid growth that's happening and the inability to sustain the infrastructure. I worry about that, but I also feel like that hardship question of what is considered a hardship and defining that, what about the neighbors where applicants come in and they have the right to ask for waivers and special use permits and things like that, but the abutters, unless they bring in legal counsel and engineers and pay thousands and thousands of dollars to try not to let that person get a waiver for their hardship, I feel like there's discrepancy in there of what our town allows. And that's just a concern I have for the increase in growth of what's happening, that we have so many waivers, and I can't tell you how many meetings I've sat in the past year and a half, of how many waivers and special use permits are being passed. And if the abutter doesn't have, quote, expert testimony, which has to come from a lawyer or a engineer, then what happens is that it doesn't matter. Their information, their testimony, their presentation to the boards or the council is considered not valid. And I worry about when we do these ordinances, I didn't know that was state law, so that's good clarification for that. So these are just things I'm worried about.
No,
the
Teresa, I
rapid
appreciate
growth.
that, but one thing I'd just like to say is that I sat on the zoning board for 4.5, almost 5 years, and I understand what you're saying about the expert witness and it costs the taxpayer, the average taxpayer, to fight something. I get that, that's the nature of that business, unfortunately, but I always, first and foremost, considered the residents first. That's just me, and I'm sure there's others too, so to say it's not valid, I don't think that's accurate, just my own opinion. I think that these are town people that live in town, they have to look at both sides and weigh what they think is their best decision based on, does this meet the criteria, doesn't, and the expert testimony and the residents' testimony. That's how I always looked at it, so.
Right,
But
and I
know what you're
understand
saying.
that. But unfortunately, I've been recently told that the resident testimony is heard, but
If I can
it's
clarify
tough.
that.
It's a tough scenario.
There are certain areas, and once again, this comes from state law, and it's usually engineering issues. You know, an engineer comes in and testifies with regard to, you know, the water table that may be present on a particular property, and a neighbor may come up and say, who's got no background in it, whether it's hydrology or whatever else, and gives testimony on that. You know, that sort of lay testimony on an issue which typically requires scientific or expert testimony, the Rhode Island Supreme Court says that's of limited probative value. But when you get to the general issues of, is it too big, is it too tall, is the lot coverage too much, is it going to have a negative impact on my property, those, you know, that rule doesn't apply to that sort of testimony. So I think the boards, you know, certainly in my experience, whether it's in Middletown or other communities, you know, particularly where you have close direct abutters who have concerns, I think those concerns are generally taken very seriously by the boards. But in some cases where you're talking about real specific scientific or engineering testimony, that's the issue sometimes where the boards have difficulty accepting a layperson's testimony over someone who's recognized as an expert.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to state my piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, Teresa. Anything else?
Okay, anybody else like to speak on this ordinance?
Okay, motion to close the public hearing?
Second?
All right, motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Motion to insert section 704?
Before you close, do you need to reopen your motions.
I thought they would come after the,
We have to, any amendments have to go
Okay.
within the public
And
hearing.
okay,
So reopen the public hearing, please, and then make the motions to modify the,
okay.
amend the ordinance. Thank
You
you.
really want to confuse this old gal, don't you? All right. Motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No, make the motion.
Motion to close it now?
No, no. I'll make
Okay,
the motion.
all right. Let's see, three. Motion to insert section 704 height and yard modifications under E, the words for a principal building after the word height.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Motion to amend the word second to read as follows. This ordinance shall take effect on March 1st, 2019, and shall supersede any inconsistent contrary provision to any other ordinance.
Second.
motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to
This
close.
one's easy.
Motion to close.
Motion to adopt. Don't
Motion to close, you can close the public hearing, right?
close the I'm green at this.
That's
Motion
okay.
to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in
Okay.
favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Motion to adopt said ordinance in its second reading as amended.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hey, you did great. Oh, there you go. All right? Okay, thank you, Mrs. Sanos. Okay, item number 24, continued from the February 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the council. Public hearing advertised. Public hearing remains open. In order to the town of Middletown, second reading. In ordinance and amendment to the town code of the town of Middletown, Title 15, Land Usage, Chapter 152 Zoning Code, amending the definition of product stand in Section 400, entitled Definitions, and adding definitions for agricultural-related products, agricultural operations, farm, small, farm, large, farm-based retail, farm cafe, limited food service, pick your own produce, and wine brewery distillery thereto. Section 602, entitled Schedule of District Regulations, Uses in Districts, subsection F of Section 703, entitled Accessory Uses and Structures, and Section 722, entitled Farm Promotion, Accessory Uses. See the attached ordinance.
This has been continued, this item has been continued to the March 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the council.
Is that a motion?
It is a motion,
Thank
sir.
you, ma'am.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And the reason we continued that was because I would have to recuse myself. Somebody would have to be sworn in as a presiding officer. And Bob and I spoke today, and I spoke to the other councils, and we thought it was just best to continue that till the next meeting. Okay. Number 25, town council business. Number 25, continued from the February 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the council. Communication of Council President Sylvia in reference to discuss, interview, and appointing process of the planning and zoning boards.
Motion to receive said communication.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we do have someone who'd like to speak on this item. Art, just come up and state your name and address for the record, please.
Art Weber, 145 Island Drive. I've had several of the council members ask me maybe to help a little bit in describing what you might be looking for to appoint to the planning board. Zoning does their own thing. Having been on the planning board for almost 20 years, I think I've got some ideas for you. Anybody that wants to come on the planning board should be at least conversant with the comprehensive plan and the development plan review process. And if I were thinking about running for the planning board, I think I would go see the planner and perhaps take a look at those documents before I consider myself capable to come onto the planning board. The other things I think that are important are some personal qualities. You need intellectual agility to serve on the planning board because it's kind of a question of walking and chewing gum. Many times you have to look at things that have 4 or 5 variants to them. What are the zoning constraints? How does the ordinance work? Is it consistent with the comp plan? So those are important things. The other thing is, if you're coming on the planning board, quite frankly, you need to have no agenda. You need to be able to vote on things based on the rule of law the consistency with the comp plan, and the ordinances and zoning. If you have an agenda, you are not going to be able to give an unbiased opinion on the application. And lastly, perhaps one of the most important things I've learned is that your decision ultimately must be decided in what the best interests of the town are. That's never to be compromised. So those are a couple of things that I thought I would pass along to you. I would encourage you to find us 2 more bodies. We're 5 and several of us are up for renewal. We are busy, and anybody coming on the planning board has to commit a lot of time to it. It's not just 1 meeting a month. It's site visits, it's writing ordinances. Every decade we write a new comp plan, and we have right now 2 new subcommittees which are working on your new overlay district. One will look at the zoning aspects, another one will look at the architectural and dimensional sites. So those, I just throw those out to you as a consideration when you're looking at people to serve on that particular board.
Okay.
And by the way, we have a new manual that I got from Grossmart, which we use for training. We actually train people to come on the planning board that are new ourselves, so that when they sit on the board, they're prepared to do what they need to do.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Art.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so this came about because, you know, when we do these zoning and planning interviews, to choose new zoning board members and new planning board members, some councils thought that maybe we should change the questions. So we went through, there was, you know, some recommendations and based upon, you know, what some councils thought. So that's kind of what brought us here. And some of us sat on some of those boards in the past, so in the recent past. So does any councils have any recommendations on what they'd like to, or any discussion?
Mr. President.
Councilor Flynn?
Thank you. I would like to invite the audience. I had sent the town council a memo February 4th, and it's sort of a thoughts, an outline of the whole process of volunteer appointments, which starts with the application, then the interview, if it's zoning and planning, and then the vote, and then post-appointment action items to consider, suggestions for the council to consider. One of the things that I ran into that I wanted to share with everyone is for this new round of appointments, I was looking at the applications, and you know, one of the weaknesses of our application is that it asks, for example, who your employer is and how long you've been there, and nothing about your skill sets. So although there's a spot later on that says, you know, your work experience that might relate to the volunteer position, it really doesn't give me a good idea as to what that person, you know, has that they can bring to the table. So I found myself, talked to the president of the council, asked if I could give those applicants a call and find out some things, and he said that I could. And it was pretty eye-opening, you know, to actually reach out to people and, you know, find out a little bit more about their background. So I think that the application could be expanded or worked on, or things considered by the council. The questions actually came up from Councilor Von Villis, who made a great observation that in the interviews, the first person who's up on the podium is at a disadvantage because they get the questions first, and the folks afterwards have a little bit more time to kind of ponder their answer. So which I thought was a great perspective, and in the, you know, vein of fairness, to consider having them submitted in writing. You know, little things that you could do when those online applications go in, and this is on my memo, I have some on the table out there if you want to grab them to reference or on your way out, things to think of. When people submit their online application, it goes into a black hole. You have no idea if it's been received or not, and a simple, you know, code line to say, thank you for your application, it's been received. And this has been going on. This round of appointments, the due date for the applications, not the reappointments, because they get a little notice in advance, but the application deadline was December 20th. And here we are on February 19th, and these people, these applicants, haven't heard a thing. They think it's done and gone by. They have no idea we're still talking about it. So there should be a follow-up maybe, every 2 weeks, where it's on this agenda, you're still in consideration, thank you very much. So these are the type of suggestions I put on this memo. That's just a few of them. On the voting element, I'm trying to just give you one on each category. In the interview, we might consider executive session interviews if we really want to peel back the onion. If it's allowed, I don't know, there may be legal things, I'm sure Peter will jump in. And if there's more than one, more applicants than positions, maybe we do a ballot vote. So Councilor Sylvia, last time we met, said you didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, or it's embarrassing to see what the vote is if it's not in your favor. So under those circumstances, perhaps the council considers a ballot vote. And then, we're covered, and we get the best person for the job. In post-appointment category, we should insist that folks, as Mr. Weber pointed out, that continuous training, first thing they should do is watch the ethics seminar, which is now on our December 17th, 2018 town council meeting. They just need to watch it so that then, they've been exposed to all that information that's important. And, I know for planning, there's a rising seawater required training now. So we just need to make sure that, as stated, that our volunteers are getting the training. And certainly post-appointment, thank everyone who's applied and encourage them to apply for something else. So there are more ideas on that memo, and I just wanted to throw them out to the council for consideration, just suggestions to help the residents and make the process the best it can be.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, we have Mr. Viveris would like to speak on this matter. Please state your name and address, Anton.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. Anton Viveris, 110 Indian Hill Road. I do agree with the essay questions, written questions returned to the council. But, how tight do you want to make the requirements for serving on the board or committee? I mean, if I didn't know anything, but I moved into town, I was interested in town, and I was interested in what was going on and wanted to take part. I want to know zoning, there it is right there. Everything I want to know is right there. When you start making requirements, you can set up certain qualities of certain people. I once worked for a particular department, government department, and if you wanted to know who they wanted to have the job, just look at the questions they asked. The questions were designed for certain people. Degrees, whether it be masters or qualifications was a certain way so that certain people were the ones that could fill that bill. So as far as these essay questions, everybody gets the questions, the same questions. Nobody has any advantage by being the first one up. But zoning, planning, comprehensive plan, we look at the comprehensive plan to see what that says. Zoning, I can go right to the book and see what the zoning says pertaining to the development that's coming before me. So I just caution against something like that. I think you start to narrow it down and it doesn't look so open anymore. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Anton.
Thank you, Mr. Veras. I've listened to both sides, and Terry, bring up some good points about, people never hear back. Wendy, do we follow up with anybody? Do we send them saying, thank you for applying, but...
After you've done the appointments, we send a letter saying thank you for applying, or we send them a letter that you've been appointed.
Do we send them, is there any notification that we've received their application?
There is now.
Okay.
They worked on it through the computer system, and I think you applied for a position, and he received a receipt. So
Awesome.
we've worked on that, and that's that is working.
That's important. As far as going too deep into, and I kind of agree, you know, these people are volunteers. I mean, do you want the best person? Sure you do. But, you know, we want to encourage volunteers. We don't want to discourage them. I think essay questions or writing, you know, too many essay questions, for me, that's just my opinion. I think it's a good idea, but is it practical for a lot of these people? Maybe it's not. So I think we keep, my own opinion, I think we keep it simple. You know, we've attracted a lot of good people over the years. Could there be modifications to make it better? Sure. And I'm not opposed to that. I just think we just need to keep it simple to attract more volunteers. Mrs. Von Villis.
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of not making it a laborious process. I would suggest that you probably want to limit the questions to like 3, no more than 3, and certainly not be looking for a book's worth of answers, okay? So they need to be questions that, that give some sense of whether the person actually knows what the planning or zoning board does, okay? Something like that. But again, I would like to get some sense. I don't feel comfortable with individual counselors interviewing individual candidates. I don't think that's appropriate at all, because I don't think that everybody gets to hear the same answers or the same perspective, and I don't think that's appropriate. But I do think that the questions, and I'm the person, as she said, I'm the person who brought up the going to some sort of written answers, because of the fact that as Mrs. Flynn described, the first candidate answers the questions that may be asked by the individual council members while the other candidates are sitting in the audience, and it's very easy to look and see, oh, how was that received, or how they would influence how they would give their own answers. So yeah, I support the concept of perhaps 3 questions, not terribly long, okay, nothing that's going to require a book writing, and at least that gives us some sense of whether the person has the knowledge, a little bit of knowledge. I don't think we want people that are unknowledgeable to be appointed to the boards. Starting out as 0 is not a good thing, but to show that they have some knowledge, that they have some skill, and I was impressed with what Mr. Weber said about not having an agenda. We're not looking for people who go in saying that they're going to change the world from this perspective. What we want is people that will look at the rules, look at the regulations, look at the ordinances, and go by that, even if they don't like them. The fact is that the ordinances and the laws are there as guidelines to be followed, not to be abridged. So I think that's what we're looking for.
Okay. Councilor Lombardi.
So I have to agree with Paul. I have to agree with some of your points, Barbara. The word laborious is not the right word. The right word is onerous.
Okay.
Because, again, they're volunteers. And we don't have enough now. I don't want to be scaring them away. I think we should encourage people to come out and volunteer for these boards and commissions. I think when you look at the questions, very basic questions for new applicants, I think what we could do is make it part of the application. So when you apply, there'll be 3 questions. Very simple, very basic questions. Answer them in the application so that all the councilors can read them when we get the applications. There's no public spectacle, and we're not going to embarrass anyone in public because maybe they don't speak well in public. Maybe they get nervous in front of us. But they certainly could probably write their question out and answer that way. So we could make that as part of the application. The other piece of it is, I don't think we should be holding reappointments. If they've done a good job, I don't think we should be holding them to the same standard as a new applicant. If they've done a good job and we feel like they should be reappointed, unless there's an issue, then I think we need to just look at their application a little bit differently than a new appointment. An opening that's there and it's not a reappointment. That's just my suggestion on that piece of it. We've had some people who were long-standing on zoning and were long-standing on planning, and they've done a good job, and they're well-schooled, and you're not bringing in a constant turnover where the learning curve is longer, and where, particularly the planning board right now is so busy, looking at ordinances and different committees, that I think at the end of the day, we should be giving and holding our reappointments to a different standard. I don't want to see them having to answer 3 basic questions about why do you want to be on the planning board. It's pretty obvious why they want to be on the planning board. They've been doing the job. And if they haven't been doing the job, then you replace them. Pretty simple, I think, at the end of the day. I have one more thing.
Go ahead. Yes, sir.
And as far as the voting needs to be done in public, on camera, and we all should stand on our own 2 feet as councilors. No secret ballots. Do it in public and stand up and be counted. That's how I look at that. People appoint us to make decisions, and we shouldn't be doing it in executive session in secret by secret ballots, and nobody knowing who stood up for what. If I don't believe in something, I'm going to stand up for it. If I believe in something, I'm going to stand up for it and I'm going to speak my mind. But I'm not doing anything in secret. I want it out there for everybody to see. I really believe that. I don't like the secret ballot stuff. So I think with that, I want to support us making that basic change and put those questions on the application, and then we can all review them, and we can make a vote, or we can decide who we want to lead towards.
Okay.
Question?
Yes, Mrs. Sanders.
Thank you. When we interview these individuals, do we interview them one by one, or as Mrs. Von Bellis has recommended, that we interview them one by one so that the other persons will not be aware?
I don't think we can do that, Peter. I think I asked that question, Peter, and I think you told me that it had to be open session.
Oh my gosh, excuse me, Peter, if
Okay.
I may interrupt you.
No, it's okay.
We interviewed the police chiefs, future
No,
police.
what I think what I said is that the person being interviewed can require it to be in open session.
Yeah, I mean,
But you can do that, you can do them in,
I don't see why you couldn't
Executive
ask the
session.
other one to stand outside and wait while you interview the other one, so they don't hear their
well,
answer.
you can only do that if it's executive session.
Okay.
But-
Which you could do, but, because open session means it's open. Anybody can be in on it, so.
Okay.
All right.
So let me ask you this. I would like, if we're gonna do that, I would like the word essay to not be included in the,
Yeah, it makes it-
essay, when I hear essay, I'm like, I gotta write a book, or I gotta write, X amount of paragraphs. I think just questions, whatever they are. Now, Wendy, the current questions that I have in front of me are different than the last time we interviewed people. I just want to make sure everyone understands what the current questions are.
I don't think we should act on questions.
Okay. You just want to have a continued discussion?
I certainly do, because there's too many things proposed.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Mr. President,
Mrs. Flynn?
if you don't mind, I would just like to respond to a couple of things that Councilor Lombardi said, that, I would not support a council mandate to consider some applications differently over others regarding the reappointment issue. If any councilor would like to use that as their criteria for voting, that's perfectly fine, but I don't think that everyone should be held to that criteria or any particular criteria, excuse me. Also, remember, the ballot idea, which is accounted for, it's an option in Robert's rules, is simply to address President Sylvia's concern that some people might be embarrassed if there are more applicants than positions. So there's nothing secret going on here. This is all in consideration of the residents and of the people coming up to volunteer. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I'm going to really say this. The planning board is going right now minus 2 members. This has been dragged along since December.
I agree.
We need to make appointments.
would the council be in favor of just keeping it like we have it right now until, so we get
Absolutely.
2 people on, and then we can continue to have this discussion
Yes.
till we get it right, till we
Yes.
can agree on.
Well, move on to the question.
What do you want, this? Motion to follow the previous interview process for the planning and zoning boards.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Amen.
thank you. Let's read in number 26. Number 26, continued from the February 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the council. Communication of Council President Sylvia in reference to senior affordable housing update and discuss the best course of action.
This item has been continued to the March 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the council.
Second.
That's a motion and a second. All in favor? Okay, Town Administrator business. Number 27, memorandum of Finance Director through Town Administrator with enclosures in reference to contract award, Middletown-019-004, consulting services for senior affordable housing feasibility study.
Motion to continue this item to March 4th, 2019 regular council meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, number 28, resolution of the council in reference to water contract, Middletown-019-004, senior affordable housing feasibility study.
Motion to continue this item to the March 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the council.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item number 29, communication of tax assessor with enclosures in reference to cancellation of taxes for certain Middletown residents.
Motion to receive said communication.
Second.
Motion to receive and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Sean?
This is an abatement list submitted by the assessor for the council's consideration. A list is provided of the various abatements along with the reason codes.
Is there a reason that this is on the regular? I know there was an issue a couple meetings ago, but is there a reason this is on the regular?
The
docket?
council voted for this to be on the
Okay.
regular calendar
Okay.
from now on.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. We have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, number 30, resolution of the council in reference to cancellation of taxes for certain Middletown residents.
Motion to pass said resolution.
Second.
A motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, number 31, resolution of the council in reference to appropriation for trees and planting in the valley.
Motion to pass said resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion, Mr. Brown.
The council reviewed this at the last meeting. This is funding that's necessary to complete Phase 3 of the planting in the valley, which is the last planting phase that's been planned. So at this point, what I was asked to do is bring back a resolution to identify the source of the funding from the last meeting, and that's what this is.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. Number 32, memorandum of town administrator with enclosures in reference to repairs for hot box installation proposal at Gaudet Middle School.
Motion to receive said memorandum. Excuse me.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Mr.
This
Brown.
is a recommendation from the administration to provide $108,000 of funding to the school department for the purpose of addressing the water meter that services the Gaudet School. One of the issues that really businesses in Middletown and Newport have been experiencing over the last couple of years is this issue of cross-connection control, in which the city of Newport requires backflow preventers in the water system to avoid situations where water from outside of the water department's sourcing enters the water system itself. The school department has received a notice that the Gaudet School meter needs to be upgraded to include this backflow preventer. The meter itself needs to be updated regardless. This was not part of the capital budget for this year, but due to the regulatory nature of this, we bring it forward tonight, and there's a recommendation to fund it with money coming from the JFK Special Revenue Fund.
Okay. Any questions from the council? I have a couple. So, when I was reading this, as I started reading some of the details, I saw that there's potential, everyone's always looking for potential savings, right? So I guess my first question is there a time, is this something pressing, like needs to be done, or what's the time frame for this to be done?
It needs to be done in the near term in order to comply with the city of Newport.
What is that, what is the definition of near term? Is it next couple months? Or?
Next couple of months.
Okay. So, it was pretty straightforward. It just said, you know, some of the exclusions is what I was narrowing in on, or focusing in on. Proposal excludes taxes. What does that mean?
There's no taxes included in the proposal. We'll provide the vendor our tax ID so that
Okay.
they're not paying taxes on materials
Okay.
or anything like that.
So, so the meter will be supplied by the water department and installed by this company if the council approves it. National Grid will charge, there's a charge, I think it's like a $5,000 for National Grid to required for power to the new hot box.
Correct.
The pricing's been adjusted for the work being performed during the summer, so they calculate it to be more expensive in the summer than it is now, than it would be now.
Potentially, yeah, if we move that in that direction. But again, I think what Mr. Fons is looking at this, doing this during the spring vacation or early June, so.
Okay. And then, you know, when you look at, when you read it, and it talks about what's required in the scope of the work, you know, there'd be digging, it mentioned digging trenches and stuff like that, and a cement pad. It talked a little bit about, or mentioned a little bit about maybe we could collaborate with Public Works and the school department to maybe realize some savings, but that's really all it mentioned. It didn't say we were doing that, and that's my question. Are we planning on doing that? How much would we save if we did do that? And so forth.
I think at this time, we need to look at which time period we're looking at, whether it's April or June. If it's earlier, I believe that's a project that Public Works may be able to help out with. As we get towards June, it'll become more difficult based on the staffing.
But have we communicated with the school, Sean?
Oh, we have, yes.
Okay.
We're working on a number of projects with the school department right now. Mr. Fons has been helping out with HVAC on the town side. Obviously, the council was notified of the building in the back of the Berkeley Peckham School. So there's a constant level of communication that's occurring right now.
So, I mean, I know everyone gets busy in the springtime, but I think if it's scheduled and it's communicated and it's worked out, I think we could probably realize some savings if the Public Works dug the trenches and worked with the town, worked with the school department. And there's plenty of talent there where they could dig for the cement pad and box it in and cement, you know, pour the cement, stuff like, just little things like that, because it adds up over time. That's just my thought as I read this. And it was mentioned, which I was happy to see, that there's potential synergies, but talking about it and actually doing it, you know, that's two different things.
Yep. So again, it's just, once we get a date scheduled, we'll figure out who's available. We are operating Public Works 2 employees short right now, so that is a difference. You know, it's weather dependent and project dependent,
Okay.
but the goal is to save money.
Right. No, I mean, I have no issue with approving it. I'm just approving it based upon, hopefully we can realize some savings with some in-house work being done.
And that's loud and clear.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Tarano.
Thank you. Just looking at the quote itself, it's really kind of like a 2-page quote. And it's asking for $108,000. Was there a second bid on this? Or is this the only person who's bid on the project?
We're using a master price agreement for the rates to complete the project. So that's basically how this was priced out. We did not go out to bid. We're using rates that are established under a state master price agreement.
With this company?
This company happens to be on the master price list, yes.
So we don't need to get two quotes?
No, not based on, basically there being master price agreements. So master price agreements themselves are bid out, so these are, in essence, competitive prices. And what it does is it allow us to piggyback on those bids that have been done to reduce the cost of bidding an item itself. So it is, again, the price is competitively bid, or that this estimate or proposal is based off of bid prices, but we only sought the one price.
I mean, because obviously I haven't done a project like this, and it seems like $108,000 is quite a chunk of change.
It's consistent,
Is there anyone talking about number of hours that this is going to take, timelines? I mean, because we don't have hours or any timeline in regards to when it'll start and when it will be done.
So independent of this cost, the town engineer Warren Hall had given me an estimate of what he thought the price would be. Without saying this, it is consistent with what Warren would have estimated the job to be. Mr. Fonts would have reviewed the price and the details. What's being brought forward tonight is the proposal sheet, but there has been work done behind the scenes to validate the 108 price.
Can they talk a little bit about what work's going to be done? I see this as a combination of National Grid's going to be in here doing some work, right, getting the box in there, and then the pumps from the Newport Water Department, but then the town of Middletown's doing the rest. And I'd like to know a little bit more about the cross box and how that works. So,
Mr. Fonts is here. I guess on the second page of the proposal, the 11 steps that are included in the 108,000 are there. And as the council vice president pointed out, we would work to identify where Public Works can, or the school department can assist to reduce the cost. But if I can have Mr. Fonts.
Dave, do you mind coming up and just giving an overview of the scope that Dennis is looking for, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
So presently, the meter for Gaudet, it's in a pit underground, it floods out. So what the work involves, we have to tap into the main that comes into the Gaudet complex. We have to put a ground stop valve there. We have to dig up the pit, and then we have to install a hot box so everything's above the ground. So the hot box is a heated enclosure. It includes your valves, your meters, and all your backflow prevention devices. So the work being done out of T&M, we did it that way because there's a potential, like it's already been discussed, if the DPW can assist with the backhoe work. We're only going to pay to be work slips every day. That's how we do T&M towards the MPA. And then there's the unit cost invoices for the pots themselves.
right? Because this is out of budget. I mean, this isn't something we budgeted for, right? So how come the Newport Water doesn't have to participate in moving this meter? I mean, it's their meter, and who put it in that area in the first place?
I'm not sure, but the main piece of this is it lacks backflow prevention. And it's illegal to put a backflow preventer in a pit,
It's illegal to put it in a pit?
a backflow prevention device.
Why was it done in the first place?
What would you have?
It's code.
You and I had a discussion about
Sure.
this. I know a little bit about this.
There's no room in that pit to put a backflow
Why
device.
can't you put a new pit? Heated, sealed pit? I know some places it's done.
Yeah.
Is it legal?
So.
Yeah, it was legal. Newport Water ordered it to be done.
Yeah, those guys, I don't know why Newport Water's not stepping up here.
So have we talked to Newport Water at all?
I've talked to City Manager Nicholson, so
And what did he have to say?
that they've been corresponding with the school department, that this is a requirement. So
But is it their meter?
it's their meter, but they're providing a meter.
Okay.
We have to provide,
And that's typical of what happens in a project like this. They provide a meter, they're not responsible for anything else.
exactly.
Okay.
And they approved the design. They basically gave us the design of what they wanted put in.
Okay.
I don't know, I think you just gotta be a little bit careful with that. I think that's, you know, they tell us what they want, and if we don't push back, because I've been involved in projects where they say it's A, and when you dig down and you find out it's actually B, and part of it is their issue, I mean, they don't wanna do anything. The water department will do nothing.
I think just to
So
clarify.
I just wanna make sure that we're, you know, not doing stuff that the water department should be helping us with. And I don't know why, the backflow valve is something that's new, that's required. So now we have to do that because we're addressing the pump, the meter issue.
Backflows are not new. Working with the Providence Water Supply Board back 20 years ago, they required backflow prevention. And the organizations that I worked for were responsible for putting in that backflow prevention, not Providence Water Supply Board.
Yeah, I had to put a backflow in my yard about 10 years ago, for the town requirement.
Right.
And so, yeah, and it was about $1,000 for a small one, and they're not cheap.
They're expensive.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the water department, you know, we had a resident, I'm just gonna give you an example of what the water department tells us. We had a resident who wanted to tie into a water line, and we were told the resident couldn't tie into it because it would over exceed the capacity of the line, so they were gonna force him to replace the whole line in the road so he could tie into it. So we had to press back. And it came back to where he could tie into that line, even though it is compromised. Are they gonna fix the line? No. So I hear Newport Water and National Grid, they're gonna do the least amount they can do. And so I just hope we're pushing back hard.
Mr. Lombardi.
And Dave, I wasn't putting on you, I was watching your face. It's inconsistent with something that I know about, it just happened recently. I'm gonna put you in touch with somebody so you can have a
Sure.
discussion, okay? That's all I'm saying. And it was Newport Water ordering it, and they even looked over the design, and they held certain standards, and it's the same thing, it's a backflow thing. I'm putting you in touch with somebody that you can talk.
Okay, Mrs. Sanos.
Mr. Fonz,
Yes.
can you tell me how long this hot box has been in Gaudet School?
There is not a hot box right now. That's being proposed.
Okay. What is presently there, how long has it been there?
The meter,
Yes. Since the school was built?
probably from when the school was built.
Okay, and what's the lifeline of this hot box that's going to be installed?
The hot box itself, I would think probably 30 years.
I won't be around.
Yeah, you will. Yeah, you will. Mr. Brown.
I just wanted to clarify that this was originally a budget request that came forward from the school department. It came out of the budget with the intent of challenging the city of Newport. It was a discussion that has been going on. The issue is Newport continues to pursue it from a regulatory standpoint. So I just want to reassure the council, this isn't something that we're just doing. It is something that we avoided doing when the budget was adopted. But again, going through the discussions with the city directly between Dave and the city, as well as myself with Administrator Nicholson, Manager Nicholson, it needs to get done.
Okay.
So, and if if Rick has something that will help us reduce the costs, then we're all on board, so.
Might help, but, Sean, how much is in the JFK Reserve Fund?
I don't know offhand, Mark's, I was gonna ask Mark. Mark was off today. I'll provide that to the council. It's not a lot because we seem to come around to one of these things that needs to get fixed. But I will provide that to the council.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mrs. Flynn.
I just have a next step question. So if Councilor Lombardi thinks that there may be some savings to be achieved and Councilor Toronto thinks that there might be some wiggle room for responsibility, what do we do with this item?
I think we have to, from a regulatory standpoint, with this issue that's been dragging on, I think we go forward with it, and we can realize those savings at the time if we can.
So if we say 108,000, we approve, we're not obligated to.
Up to 100.
The resolution says up to.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Any further discussion?
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Let's move on to number 33, resolution of the council in reference to contract for school hot box installation at Gaudet Middle School.
Motion to pass said resolution.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, boards and committees. Number 34, please note Council Lombardi is recusing himself from item number 34. Number 34, continued from the February 4, 2019 regular meeting of the council, appointment of one member to the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission to complete a term expiring July 2020.
Motion to appoint Mr. Arthur S. Weber to the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission to complete a term expiring July 2020. Excuse me.
There's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Von Villis. Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Number 35, continued from the February 4th. Please note, Council Lombardi is joining us. Number 35, continued from the February 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the council. Appointment of 4 members to the Beach Commission. Terms expire November 2020.
Mr. President, motion to appoint Charlene A. Rose Cirillo, Marilyn Hennessy, John Crimmins, M. William Seipel.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion?
I will forego my discussion with that particular motion. I had an attendance concern, and that motion will address it.
Thank you, Mrs. Flynn.
Thank you
Okay.
for the opportunity.
Okay. Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Number 36, appointment of one member to the Economic Development Advisory Committee, term expiring January 2024.
Motion to re-advertise for the Economic Development Advisory Committee and hold the current application.
Second.
Motion and a second to re-advertise. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Number 37, thank you. Number 37, continued from the February 4, 2019 regular meeting of the council, appointment of one member to the Juvenile Hearing Board, auxiliary member, term expiring April 2021.
Motion to appoint Samantha M. Silveria.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion.
Please.
Mrs. Flynn.
So I just wanted to point out to the board that, you know, the 3 candidates, I'm sure they're all very well qualified, don't know any of them. But looking at the applications, I have a concern with someone who has 4 school-age children, because you're in front of the juvenile board, there may be likelihood that there's going to be a friend, associate, some connection coming before that person on that board. One of the other candidates is already has a position with the town, and so I think other volunteers should be given a chance. And Bill Sheehan, you know, he has a bachelor's degree, he's retired, he's worked with the adult disabled population according to his resume and the Women's Resource Center, and I think the town would really benefit from his service. But I do have a concern with that particular candidate that has been added to the motion for the reasons that I stated. I think there's going to be potential conflict, and I noticed in her application she has an associate's degree. I think we have someone who's applying with a bachelor's degree, and I think that would be a better fit for those 2 reasons.
Okay. Thank you,
Mr. President?
Mr. Lombardi.
Okay.
So, every time you sit on a board of commission in this town, because Middletown is so small, and it seems like everybody is related or knows somebody in this town, you're going to run into conflicts. Look at who you are. And the ethics piece of it requires you to recuse. I sat on the juvenile hearing board before I was on the council. I had 2 school-age kids. I know a lot of people in this town. It's unavoidable. It's going to happen. I think Ms. Silveria is a highly qualified candidate. She's a new applicant. Again, we should be encouraging new applicants, not that the other applicant isn't, but she's been a long-standing member of this community for years, her family. So I'm going to wholeheartedly support her. I think the the piece about the conflicts is a red herring. I think at the end of the day, we all have conflicts. I mean, I just recused myself from a vote. It just happens in this town. Every one of us up here has had to do that. It's just the nature of the beast.
I know that all too well. Okay, Mrs. Sanos.
For once, I agree with Mr. Lombardi.
Council Clerk, can you please note that Council Lombardi and Council Sanchez agree on something?
If you have a,
I agree with you more than you said.
if you have a problem that is going to come before you, you recuse yourself. Mrs. Flynn, you've recused yourself on a number of occasions. So this person, she just recuses herself if something comes before the board. That's all.
So
Simple as that.
I understand that. I'm just saying with 4 school-age children, you're leaving it for up to 2 people to make a lot of the decisions potentially. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me. So
Okay.
I wanted to put that forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
Okay, opposed? Thank you.
Thank
Sorry. Number 38, continued from the February 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the council, appointment of 5 members to the Open Space and Fields Committee, terms expiring November 2021.
Motion to appoint all 5 reappointments and not appoint Marilyn Hennessy because she has been appointed to the Beach Commission.
Wendy, do we need those names read individually?
Yes.
I think we should.
All right, I'm going to
Yes.
goof up on that first one.
Cheryl Burgess.
Okay, Cheryl Burgesson, Jason Evans, Alan R. Gray, Sarah Portier, Tom Welch, all for reappointments.
The motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Number 39. Continued from the February 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the council, appointment of 1 member to the Pension Trust Fund Committee, term expiring February 2022.
A motion to appoint Peter Damon to the Pension Trust Fund Committee for the term expiring February 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Number 40, continued from the February 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the council, appointment of 1 member to the Personnel Board, term expiring December 2021.
Motion to appoint Lawrence F. B. Kessler for reappointment.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mrs. Flynn?
Please.
Yes, ma'am.
So, these appointments, they're all very important, and I actually had to look at the duties of the Personnel Board to compare the candidates. And in our Code of Ordinances, some of the tasks or duties are to formulate, maintain, and recommend to the Town Council for adoption or modification a position classification plan for all town employees, a plan embodying appropriate recommended pay scales, personnel policies, determine the qualifications and eligibility of candidates for positions, certify appointing authority that persons who are candidates possess the qualifications required by the classification plan, and examine payrolls at least twice a year. So I looked at Mr. Kessler's application. He's a retired state police lieutenant. He's now a transportation coordinator. He's been on the board since 2009. And then I looked at the other applicant who sent in a sizable paragraph of her qualifications, which include, and I'll just do the highlights, working in the business world for 25 years, managing anywhere from 5 to 500 team members within human resource, retail, security fields. Experience includes managing personnel, including recruiting, interviewing, hiring, onboarding, as well as employee relations-related matters, including disciplinary concerns, workers' compensation, leave of absences, as well as creating, implementing, and monitoring policies and procedures. So given the submissions, I thought that Ms. Cunningham had the current relevant experience to be the best candidate for the job. I know that the other candidate is a reappointment. He's been doing it 10 years. You talk about encouraging volunteers to come in and help with the town, and I think that it would be awful to lose the opportunity when she has the willingness to serve. So I think that she is more aligned with what the needs of that position requires.
Mr. President?
Thank you, Mrs. Flynn. Mrs.
You're welcome.
Santos.
Mr. Brown, how often does this board meet?
This is a fairly active board. It is involved primarily with all of the hiring, with all of the promotional issues, and it does have functions that it serves in accordance with the ordinance that Councilor Flynn had read off. So it is a busy board.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Mrs. Santos, I'll address that because that concerned me as well. I looked at the Secretary of State site for that board, and they meet a lot at 4:30 in the afternoon, and it concerned me. So again, with President Sylvia's permission, I reached out to this candidate, and she has a flexible schedule and would be able to meet all the meetings, whether they were at 9, 6, 4:30, which were times all listed on the Secretary of State site of meetings that that particular board has had.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Flynn. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Number 41, continued from the February 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the council. Appointment of one member to the Roads and Utilities Advisory Committee, professional member, term expiring January 2020.
Motion to appoint Michael J. Gaston to the Roads and Utilities Advisory Committee, professional member, term expiring January 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Number 42, continued from the February 4, 2019 regular meeting of the council. Appointment of 4 members to the Senior Center Board of Directors. 1 member to complete a term expiring January 2020, and 3-member terms expiring January 2022.
Motion to,
Never mind.
motion to appoint Angeline Bordemus, Teresa A. Lacerda, Elizabeth L. Lepere to the Senior Center Board of Directors, terms expiring January 2020.
2022.
I'm sorry, 2022.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
We have a second.
Discussion. So we're looking for 4, but we have 3?
Right.
Okay, so what do we re-advertise?
We'll re-advertise.
Bless you, Mr.
Bless
Brown.
you.
Thank you.
What do we
Excuse me.
re-advertise?
Yes.
We're going to re-advertise, okay. So motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Number 43, continued from the February 4, 2019 regular meeting of the council. Appointment of 1 member to the Tax Assessment Review Board, bipartisan board, Democrat or Republican representative, term expiring October 2021.
Motion to appoint Manuel Marks Jr., Democratic representative, for a term expiring October 2021.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I noticed that I understand that that name was submitted, but we have no application for that person at all. So when I was assessing, I just said, well, it's got to be the other one because I have information for the other one.
The bipartisan boards, we've always sent letters to the parties. The parties would send the names in with no applications, we've never required applications. We also do advertise because sometimes we get no response from the parties. So that's why we don't have an application from the board. We
Okay.
just have the request, the submission from the party.
Okay.
What's,
Mr. Toronto.
what's the makeup of this board right now in regards to Republican, Democrat? It's a bipartisan.
Right now, we
board.
have one of each,
We have one of each, and so this is the third member that would be on it.
so we could have either one.
I would think we probably want to go with someone who put an application in versus someone who didn't put an application. And it's a reappointment.
Okay.
I think we should reappoint.
Mr. Lombardo?
I think we should defer to the Democratic Town Committee. If that's what we've done in the past, and they've made the recommendation, and the only time we go is if we don't get a recommendation, or if you get an application. Democratic Town Committee is, I'm assuming you have something in writing?
We have given you a copy.
Right. I would defer to the Democratic Town Committee. That's who they're appointing. That's who they want to see. I have no problem with it.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I just want to address that. We have something in writing. Essentially, it says, "The Middletown Democratic Town Committee would like to forward Manuel Marquez as a candidate for the opening at the Tax Assessment Review Board. Please let me know what other information you may need." It's nothing about this gentleman or his qualifications. I was just a little confused by the prepared motion.
Okay, so any further discussion?
I'd like to make a motion that, I'd like to.
We have a motion
There's a motion on the floor.
All right, can I?
So we have to vote on the motion,
Okay.
okay? If it fails, then we'll take another motion. That's how it goes, Wendy, right? Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Aye.
Okay. So,
Motion passes 4-2.
motion passes, I didn't see it, okay, I just heard. Okay. All right, so number 44, continued from the February 4th, 2019 regular meeting of the council, appointment of one member to the tree commission, term expiring January 2022.
Motion to reappoint William J. DeMarco to the Tree Commission for the term expiring January 2022.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, any discussion?
I have a discussion.
Mr. Toronto?
Thank you, Bob. It's mostly in regards to these boards. Do we know how many boards we actually have in the town? Different boards?
I can think of a list of all of them.
30 of them, right? Something like that, 30 of them?
I think we have a board to manage the board.
Yeah, we got boards, more boards. And one of the things is we were going through the charter, that it's the responsibility of the town, I'm not sure, I think they said it was the town administrator or somebody in the town to actually report back to the council on what's happening in these meetings. I mean, in the last couple of years, I don't recall them coming in at a certain time and talking to us, the board
The
itself.
committee
Is that-
members, the committees
is that-
report to the town administrator
So
according to
they
the
would
charter.
not address us?
I coordinate.
Yes, he coordinates, yes.
Okay, is there a set schedule to do that? Or is it just based on our request?
Well, they're required to post their minutes. What's the state law requirement now?
Right, they post their minutes just like we post for the town council minutes.
But certainly, we can set up something where there's a report that comes back.
And do they have a page? I know some do, some don't. I mean, is there any web page that says, okay, here's the comprehensive and, or the,
Everybody's on the Secretary of State's website.
but not at the town website?
Some of them have pages on the website, some don't.
Okay, because I've been visiting the town website and, you know, there are definitely outdated information on the website. But I just, when we were doing the charter review, there's board after board after board, and there are certain boards that don't even meet because they can't get a quorum and things along those lines. I just think it's important to pay attention to these boards and have a regular update, I would think, maybe quarterly or, you know, once every other month, where maybe we get an update that says this is what's going on in each of the boards. Are they thriving? Are they not thriving? You know, are the people that are on the board doing what the town is hoping that we're getting done on the boards? And try to pay a little bit more attention to it. And I think make people aware of what these boards do.
Mr. President?
Because I think it's hard for everyone out there to understand all these boards. So
Okay.
I just wanted to bring attention to it.
Thank you, Dennis. Mrs. Swin?
Just a comment to Mr. Toronto, and that I believe every board has a liaison from the town council, or almost every board. I know that we all have a bunch of other committees that we are sort of a mediator between the town council and that board or commission. And, you know, that is something that information could come to the council from those councilors also.
Okay. Thank you.
Motion
All right.
to adjourn.
We gotta vote on this.
Vote on.
You have to save my three favorite words for about 10 more seconds. Okay, we have a motion to second to reappoint. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
You want to
Sam.
say it?
No, you say it.
Motion to adjourn said meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everybody.